Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 4 of What If Naruto Became a Devil Ninja. If you guys enjoyed this What If, and want to see part 5 of it, comment down below, and let me know. Also check out previous parts of this What If. I have created a playlist for this What If, where you can find all the previous parts, link is in the description. And also go ahead and check out other What Ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content, it really means a lot. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. We're all finished, Rias. Naruto was wearing a mile-wide grin on his face, as he waltzed into the clubroom without any sense of propriety, and headed straight for the couch. Trailing in behind him was an exhausted-looking Issei. The young pervert was breathing hard and looked like he had run 12 marathons without pause. The contrast between the two couldn't be more different. The blonde bundle of energy and excitement versus the brunette who looked like he just got finished running 300 kilometers in less than a week. Where Issei looked about ready to fall over where he stood, Naruto was not only as fresh as a spring daisy, but was retaining that goofy grin he seemed to wear almost 24/7. It really did show the others just how different the two were. As had now become an almost customary happening, the moment the young Uzumaki was sitting down, Kaneko, who for some reason was always in the clubroom, always crawled onto his lap so she could be pampered. His delicate right eyebrow began twitching. This was also customary. I see, she took breath, then blew some of her bangs out of her face, causing her long, beautiful red hair to sway. That was much faster than I expected it would take. I had over 15,000 flyers in there, and you guys finished it within a single day. What can I say? Naruto was grinning broadly as Kaneko purred in his lap, his hands idly caressing her hair and ears. It was a very good thing he had been taught how to control his body's functions by Jure. What is this woman doing to me? Resistance training, brat. You need to learn how to resist a woman's sexual allure, or you may fall prey to seduction assassinations. That would have been much more believable if you weren't writing in that damn book of yours, you perv. But the girl's cute little rear pressing up against him would have caused a very awkward situation to arise. Thank Kami for small miracles. I'm just awesome like that. And what am I? Grunted Issei as he sat down and cast an annoyed glare at Naruto. Chop liver. The perverted boy didn't know how anyone could constantly be that bright and cheery, but it was beginning to piss him off. No? Wait, he was just pissed that the cute little Kaneko once again chose to sit on Naruto's lap and not his. He was a good guy, wasn't he? What did that guy have that he didn't? A lot of things, but Issei would be better off not knowing that. Well, Naruto's grin turned positively mischievous. I didn't want to say anything but... He trailed off suggestively, leaving Issei's head to slump down, and a small rain cloud to randomly appear over his head. Said cloud of rain soon began sprinkling a light drizzle onto the brown-haired boy's head, causing his hair and shirt to get wet. Why was everyone always picking on him? Was it because he was perverted? It wasn't like he could help that. Everybody was perverted to some degree or another. So, what if he was just a bit okay, a lot more open about his lecherous intentions than others? That just meant girls wouldn't need to worry about him having a secret agenda. What you see is what you get with him. That's not always a good thing, Issei. Here you two are. Akeno graced the pair with her beautiful smile as she set down a cup of tea in front of each of them. Thank you, Akeno-chan. Naruto grinned at the Natashiko girl as she stood back up and pressed the carrying tray against her bosom. Akeno smiled in return. You're very welcome, Kitsune-kun. You're not going to stop with that, are you? Asked Naruto. His answer was a giggle and a shake of the head from Akeno. The blonde sighed, but did not dwell on Akeno's nickname for very well. There were far worse things he could think of than to be called Kitsune-kun. At least she had gotten it right and called him a fox instead of a cat. Not that there was anything wrong with cats. He just didn't like it when people nicknamed him incorrectly. Naruto eyed the tea with a speculative gleam. Then he looked down at the girl nuzzling his chest with her nose and cheek, whose head he was still petting with both hands. He went back to looking at the tea. That's how am I going to drink this? Rias nearly snorted as the blonde tried to take one of his two hands away from the task of pampering Kaneko, only to have the girl snatch it back and place it on her head. She then looked at him with those large amber orbs, causing Naruto to cave like a wet paper towel. As the boy looked on, hopelessly trying to figure out how he could drink his tea while petting Kaneko, Rias felt a sense of vindication. It served him right for getting so close to the rook anyways. They had just met all of 4 days ago, and already the two were practically inseparable. He was a member of her peerage, not Kaneko's. Kaneko didn't even have a peerage. Since you've both finished handing out flyers, let's move on to the next step. Rias decided the best thing to do would be to separate the two by starting Naruto and Issei on the next part of the new lives they would be leading as devils. It was for their own good anyways. They needed to begin forming contracts, and Kaneko already had several that needed to be completed. Really, it was for the best all around. She ignored the voice that told her she just didn't like seeing Kaneko hugging all of Naruto's attention. It wasn't like she was jealous or anything. No, definitely not. The Nile is not just a river in Egypt. Alright. Issei cheered, clenching his hands into fists, and pumping them in excitement. I finally graduated from doing miscellaneous jobs. If our first task was handing out flyers in order to build our base of clientele, then our next one is forming contracts with the humans who have taken our flyers. Am I right? Naruto speculated. That's right, Ryu said, pleased that he was so quick on the uptake. It was even enough to make her forget her minor irritation towards Kaneko for sitting on Naruto's lap and getting pampered by him. Akeno, if you would. Of course, Bucho. Akeno stepped into the center of the room. Naruto watched with interest as the raven-haired girl closed her eyes and furrowed her brows in concentration. The ground beneath her began to light up. A large circle about a meter or so in circumference drew itself on the ground, glowing a deep red. It was a very complex circle, with lettering of a language Naruto did not understand running alongside the outer layer. There were multiple, elongated ovals that spanned across the entire construct, 6 in all, forming what looked almost like an atom. About a foot from the outer layer was another circle. This one kept getting cut off whenever it ran into a line from the ovals. Running along the inner edge were several symbols, and located within the approximate location of where the line would be inside of the ovals were larger versions of the same symbol. There was another oval surrounding it, and within the oval was a 12-pointed star formed from the multiple elongated ovals that spanned the entire circumference of the whole circle. Located between each point was a symbol, and in the center of the star was one final circle. Naruto had seen many things in his life, and though he was not a master at the art, he had been pretty damn good at making seals after Jiraiya taught him during their 3-year training trip. Even with everything that he knew on sealing and all the seals he had seen, the Uzumaki had never seen something that looked so damn complicated. And this girl was making it like it was nothing. It was damn impressive. As Akeno began to chant in an unknown language, to him at least, Naruto decided to let his curiosity overtake him. What exactly is this? Ryu's turned from where she was watching Akeno to him. Right now we're engraving your inscription inside of the magical diagram. She tapped her chin for a moment, quickly thinking of the best way to elaborate further. The best way to explain it would be to call it the proof of our relationship, after which this magical diagram will become the basis for all the magical powers that you'll be using. Naruto wondered if he should tell her that he wouldn't need this magical diagram thingy, since he already had his jutsu, but figured that if they went through all the trouble of doing this for him, it would be rude to refuse. Besides, while he didn't really care to learn magic, it wouldn't hurt to have another trump card available. As the old saying went, it was always good to have an ace in the hole. Naruto, said Blonde, looked up to see Rias holding her hand out towards him. Give me your hand. The blonde nodded and stood up. Or he tried to. There was a bit of a problem that prevented him from actually walking over to Rias. Kaneko. Getting out from underneath Kaneko proved to be a bit of a struggle. It seemed the white-haired first year just did not want to get off Naruto. The girl's grip on him tightened, and her face seemed to bury itself deeper into his pectoral muscles. She made the cutest mewing noises that nearly had Naruto caving in right then and there, and when she looked up at him with those eyes, those large teary amber orbs, the blonde just about died of moya. For the first time since watching Kaneko get pampered by Naruto, Ryu's found something amusing in the whole situation. Eventually, after many promises of more head petting and pampering, Kaneko allowed the blonde to leave his spot on the couch, albeit she had the cutest pout on her face. Even Rias was tempted to tell Naruto he could sit back down when she saw that expression that seemed to be the epitome of adorableness. Not that she would give in to temptation. Naruto was her servant, not Kaneko's, and that was that. On a side note, Issei ended up passing out from a nosebleed when he saw Kaneko's pout. Standing next to Rias, Naruto held out his hand, watching as the red-haired beauty took it in her own and turned his palm towards the ceiling. Taking her pointer finger, the devil who gave him a second chance at life, began drawing a circle similar, albeit much less complicated, to the one that Akeno had made. This tool will allow you to utilize the magical diagram to teleport to your summoner, Rias explained as Naruto examined the circle. After a few moments' consideration, he determined that it would be easy enough to replicate this circle on his own from now on. Though he had no clue what he would use it for. Akeno, are you ready? It's ready, Bucho, Akeno nodded. You can start any time. Okay, Naruto, stand in the middle of the magical diagram. Doing as told, Naruto stepped into the circle. Almost immediately he felt the power being emitted by the glowing circle. It was similar to, but not quite the same as chakra. The best way he could describe it was that it felt more pure, or maybe more dense. It almost reminded him of Kurama's awesome chakra, just not as powerful. This magic circle is what you will be using to teleport to various jobs, Rias continued explaining. The summoner will have a similar magic circle from those flyers you passed out yesterday. The light from the circle began to glow more brightly, and Naruto's hair began wavering as if caught in a breeze. Do you remember what to do once you get there? Make a contract with the summoner in exchange for granting their wish, Naruto recited. I got it. You don't need to worry about me, Rias. The blonde grinned as he gave the girl a thumbs up. I've got this in the bag. Rias could not help but be taken with his enthusiasm. She smiled and said, "Very well then. Have a safe trip, Naruto." Light soon engulfed his vision. The blonde had to actually close his eyes, it was so bright. When the back of his eyelids darkened, telling him it was finally safe for him to open them, he did so. And promptly frowned. He was definitely no longer in the clubroom, that much was for sure. But the room he had entered wasn't exactly what he had been expecting from someone summoning a devil. What had he been expecting? Basically, he had been expecting some kind of satanic-looking room with a dark atmosphere and maybe an altar or two for sacrifices or something. That's the kind of thing satanic cultists had decorating their houses, right? What he got instead was a bright cheery room with white walls, a cream-colored floor and pink, flowing curtains. It was a very girly room. The kind he would have expected from, well, a really cute girl. Ah. Turning around, Naruto found himself being met by said really cute girl, thereby confirming his suspicions about the person who such decor belonged to. The girl in question had long black hair and princess curls, electric blue eyes and pale skin. She was very cute, which Naruto would freely attest to. She also didn't look much older than 11 or 12. This couldn't have been the person who summoned him, could she? Excuse me, but I was wondering if you could. Moo. The girl interrupted him by crossing her arms over her chest and adopting an adorable pout. If Naruto had motherly instincts, they would have kicked in just now. I was hoping to get Kiba-kun when I summoned a devil. Naruto's right eye twitched. So, this girl really did summon him then. Dear God, they were getting younger, weren't they? Still, the girl walked over to the blonde, examining him from head to toe. Boy, what are you doing? Asked Naruto as the girl moved behind him and pinched his butt. He squeaked and held both hands against his offended rear end. What was that for? The girl completed her circuit and took a position, standing in front of him. There was a large smile on her face, and her cheeks were stained red. You're kinda cute too, she admitted at last. Naruto felt like he had passed some kind of test or something. He wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. That's good to know. I think he was actually kind of disturbed by this girl. What sort of 11-year-old pinches people on the ass? Well, whatever. Time to get down to business, he supposed. This girl had summoned him after all. So, do you have a wish you would like me to grant? He trailed off, inviting her to tell him what she wanted. I want you to take my virginity. Eh? Naruto stared at the girl blankly for several seconds. He then reached out with his hand and dug his pinky into his ear. When he was satisfied that all of the earwax was gone, he looked back at the girl. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I don't think I heard you properly the first time. I want you to take my virginity. Ah, so I wasn't hearing things, Naruto murmured. Somehow, he knew this was all Kiba's fault. That girl had mentioned Kiba when he first showed up. It couldn't be anyone else's fault. Well, it could be Issei's, but even Naruto wasn't willing to place the blame with him this time. Either way, when Naruto saw Kiba again, he was a dead man. And speaking of Issei, he wondered how the other newest member of Ria's peerage was doing. Surely, he couldn't be any worse off than Naruto was, right? Issei's situation was not much better than Naruto's. In fact, it may have been even worse. Unlike Naruto, who had enough magical energy to teleport due to his recently healed up chakra coils and being in peak physical condition, Issei's magic was practically zilch. He had absolutely no magic to speak of. This had caused him a problem when he was using the magic circle that would have summoned him to the person he was going to make a contract with. It hadn't worked. According to Rias, he just did not have enough magic to use a summoning circle. It was just another reason to hate Naruto. Not only did their cute little Kohai, Kaneko, love sitting on his lap and nuzzling against him, he could use summoning circles just fine. Stupid, blonde bastard. With the summoning circle out of his reach for the time being, he had been forced to ride his bike to his first contract. This sucked big time because the person who had summoned him lived nearly 30 miles away, meaning he had to really haul ass if he wanted to get there before it was too late. Only his desire to become a harem king gave him the strength needed to carry on. Sweaty and tired, Issei had finally arrived at the residence he had been summoned to and rang the doorbell before waiting for whoever had summoned him to answer the door. He didn't know what kind of person would be waiting for him on the other side, but Kiba had said that he was often summoned by beautiful girls. Hopefully, the blonde prince's information was accurate. It would be totally awesome if he managed to get a hot girl as his first contractor. After a few seconds of waiting, the door cracked open. Neo? Neo? Issei blinked several times, having not expected that to be the first thing he heard from the person he was to be making a contract with. Then he sighed. Great. Not only was his contractor a man, he also had something as weird as a catchphrase. The door opened further, and Issei began the necessary introduction. Sorry for intruding, but I was wondering. He trailed off, his eyes widening in horror. Welcome, Neo. Standing on the other side of the door was what could only be some kind of monster. It was large, beefy, built like a brick shit house with muscles on its muscles and arms bigger than Issei's head, and definitely not female. Not that it wasn't trying to at least look female. It was just doing a very horrible job of it. It was wearing its hair in twin pigtails with ribbons tied into bows. It was also wearing a Sailor Fuku uniform that showed off its disgustingly hairy legs, with a pair of white wings sticking out from behind its back. Issei abstractly recognized the clothes as a magical girl uniform, but that wasn't something he was immediately focused on. It was more an after-the-fact detail. A thing, for that's all it could be in Issei's mind, loomed over him like some kind of indomitable fortress of pink. I've waited for so long, Deo. Issei, who was staring up at the thing with wide, teary eyes and snot dribbling down his nose, just barely managed to speak, such was his fright. Your wish. I want you to turn Mirror-tan into a magical girl, Neo. Eh? He really should have expected that, what with the cosplay and all, but for some reason he hadn't. In fact, he was so startled that he was knocked out of his terror of the monstrosity before him. I think you need to go to another world for that. I've been to another world, but no one has the ability to give Mirror-tan magical girl powers. The hell? This thing actually went to another world. At this point, I have been forced to make a request from my enemies, the devils, to grant my wish. Enemies? Oh shit. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. This was not good. So not good. I want you to give Mirror-tan magical girl powers, Neo. Wah. I'm gonna die. Yes, Naruto may not have been the luckiest guy in the world for his first contract, but at least he didn't end up with Mirror-tan. You've got to be thankful for the little things in life. Right? Naruto walked into his first class much earlier than he usually did, which was normally just as the bell was about to ring. Several people looked at him as he entered, their jaws dropping as the foreign kid arrived to class early for once. Everyone knew that he hated class. Hell, he always slept in class. If that didn't say all my hate, then nothing did. Really, it was a wonder Naruto had grades as good as he did. It was a good thing that no one knew he was a top-class ninja. Taking a quick glance around, Naruto easily spotted his target, which may have had something to do with the fact that said target smiled and waved at him, as if they were old buddies. He immediately began walking over to the person he had been hoping to see since last night. Hey, Naruto-san, Kiba greeted with a smile on his Bishounen face. How was your first? More eyes widened as Naruto smacked Kiba in the back of the head. Several gasps were heard by the female population, which was quickly followed by several death threats for hurting their prince. Naruto ignored them. You? The blonde hissed angrily as he leaned in to whisper to the boy. There was no need to give away the knowledge that they were devils accepting contracts to fulfill people's wishes to everyone. You knew about Saya's wish, didn't you? That's why you gave her contract to me, isn't it? You bastard. Ah, Kiba winced as he rubbed a large bump on his head. Naruto had a surprising amount of strength for a newly minted devil. So, your first contract was with Saya. When Naruto's glare intensified, Kiba winced. Did you know? What? Naruto gawked at him for a second before scowling. Of course not. Who do you take me for? Issei. When Kiba just chuckled and rubbed the back of his head, Naruto sighed. Ugh, I think I've been scarred for life. Yeah, Saya can be a bit difficult, Kiba admitted, sitting down. After a moment or two, the spiky-headed blonde followed suit and sat down with a sigh. Just out of curiosity, what did you do to convince her to sign her contract? He then looked at the boy with a frown. She did sign the contract, right? Of course, Naruto told him. I gave it to Rias this morning. As for what I did, the blonde barely managed to withhold a shudder. I gave her a massage. That doesn't sound so bad, Kiba said. Usually, he had to do things that were a lot more vulgar in order to convince her to sign the contract. He had often wondered just how long he would be able to get away with simple kisses on the cheek and allowing her to do some minor groping before the precocious girl demanded more. She kept trying to make me give her a full-body massage. Kiba grimaced at Naruto's deadpan expression. As the bell for class rang, he made a reminder to give Naruto a list of possible females who may demand the same thing that Saya did. On the plus side, none of them were that young. That should at least keep him from getting hit again, right? Issei, I forbid you from ever going near the church again. The moment Naruto heard these words as he neared the doors to the occult research clubroom, he knew something was up. Deciding not to just barge in there as he was wont to do, the blonde instead leaned up against the wall right next to the door, so he could listen in without being too noticeable. It sounded like Issei had done something wrong again. The devils like us, the church is considered enemy territory, Rias continued. Naruto could almost imagine her standing behind her desk, her hands pressed flat against its surface as she looked at Issei with a combination of exasperation, concern and disappointment. If someone like you or I were to step into the church, it would create a major incident that could cause the small moment of relative peace between angels and devils to become strained. It's also a good way to get a light spear to the heart. Naruto smiled as he heard the worry in her voice. Even though her words may sound harsh to some, he could tell it was just because she did not want to see Issei get hurt. She really was a good person, caring for those under her as if they were part of her family. And don't go near anyone who has any relationship with the church, especially the exorcists. They're some of the worst enemies our kind has. They have been blessed by God, so they have enough power to destroy a devil, especially a lower class one like you are right now. If a devil were to be hit by their divine powers, they would be completely annihilated, with no hope of ever being reincarnated. Hearing this, Naruto raised an eyebrow. That was a useful little tidbit of information. He had heard of exorcists before, of course, but most of what he knew came from listening to people talk about these exorcism movies that seemed to be popular among horror fanatics. And those were always about evil spirits, not devils. Ugh, Naruto never wanted to watch an exorcist movie, ever. This is very important. Do you understand? Issei did not say anything. And if he did, it was not loud enough for Naruto to hear even with his enhanced sense of hearing. Even so, he could still imagine the perverted boy shrinking in on himself, looking absolutely intimidated by Ria's stare. Naruto had to admit, she had one hell of a stare. Oh my, a familiar voice said in his ear. Naruto sighed as he realized his time spying was done. What are you doing, Kitsune-kun? Just waiting for Rias to finish lecturing Issei, Akeno-chan. And listening in on their conversation, right? Akeno asked slyly. Naruto shrugged, not at all bothered that she knew he was spying on them. It wasn't like what he was doing was harmful. Something like that. Since Rias was no longer lecturing at Issei, Naruto figured they were done anyways, and decided to make his presence known. Barging into the room with his typical lack of subtlety, the blonde greeted the two as he always did. Yo, Rias, he grinned at the redhead, getting a smile in return. Then he looked at Issei, his grin widening into one that was decidedly vulpine. Iro deep again. Why do you keep calling me that? Issei looked like he was about to cry. Or maybe he was about to hit Naruto. It was always difficult to tell between the two. Cause you're a perv, Naruto stated in a cheery fashion. Issei looked like someone just shot his puppy, while Rias and Akeno began giggling at him. Don't worry though, the blonde shinobi patted the boy on the back, only to get his hand shrugged off. There's nothing wrong with being a lech. It's simply your way of life. Then why do you keep making fun of me for being perverted? Because it's fun. Issei's eye twitched violently. Rias covered her hand to hide her giggling. At the same time, Akeno coughed into hers. Not just to stifle her own giggles, but to get Ria's attention. Oh my, now that we've all had our fun at Issei's expense. Said boy looked like someone had just struck him with lightning, which was very apt, considering who was talking about him. I have an order of suppression from the Archduke. Naruto watched as Ria's expression morphed from its amused expression to a much more serious one. He raised an eyebrow, tempted to ask about what an order of suppression was, but decided not to, figuring he would get an answer soon enough. He had no idea how right he was. Naruto found himself standing alongside Akeno, Kaneko, Kiba, Issei and Rias later that night. The full moon was out, its moonbeams shining down upon them, and casting an eerie glow on the abandoned mansion they stood in front of. It was here that Rias had led them to after receiving the order of suppression from that Archduke guy. Said mansion looked like it had once been a grand home filled with ostentatious decorations that would be par for the course of most homes where rich, snobbish people lived. Now it was run down and abandoned. A derelict building that looked like it had been the victim of several decades worth of neglect. The walls were cracked and stained. Moss and vines had overgrown much of the structure. The windows were broken, yet the inside was too dark for even Naruto's vision to pick anything out. The place was truly in great disrepair. Listen up you two, Rias attracted Naruto's and Issei's attention. This will be important for you two to remember, as it's something that we will likely be called on to do again in the future. Naruto instantly perked up as he focused his attention on Rias. At that moment, she sounded very much like a jonin about to instruct her genin. It was actually kind of nostalgic. Rogue devils are underling devils much like yourself, except they ended up betraying their masters and went rogue. Most of them that strike out on their own act like nothing more than rabid dogs. And much like rabid dogs, they need to be put down. One of the laws of our kind is that if a rogue devil is found, they are to be destroyed with extreme prejudice. Naruto found himself nodding his head as he stored the information away. It was actually very familiar to him, as it reminded him of how shinobi villages dealt with their missing ninja. Missing ninja were not only security risks due to the simple fact that they had gone rogue, but also contained a lot of secrets within their bodies that could be used to by other villages if they fell into the wrong hands. That was why they needed to not only be killed, but their bodies destroyed entirely. That made him wonder, when rogue devils were killed, did they need to take the head back as proof of the kill? And could people earn bounties by killing them? For a second, Naruto pondered the idea of hunting rogue devils for cash. It might be a good idea to earn money. He quickly discarded the idea, however. He understood the necessity of eliminating people when they became dangerous to the safety of innocents, but he had never enjoyed killing. I take it that's why we're here? Asked Naruto, gesturing towards the empty house. There's a rogue devil in there and we've been ordered to destroy it. Rias flashed him a pleased smile. Yes, that is it exactly. We've recently received reports that humans have gone missing around here. Normally, we wouldn't bother with rumors, since there are a number of humans that go missing all the time, but these reports claim that the missing were all seen entering this house and never came out. That's normally a sign that a rogue devil has taken up residency and is luring humans in to eat them. She paused, then added, "It helps that the Archduke informed us that there was a rogue devil in our territory." "Sounds like a nasty business," Naruto muttered, while Issei paled at the knowledge that there were devils who ate humans. "It is," Rias admitted solemnly. The group soon made their way into the house. The stench of blood clung heavily to the air. Naruto, with his enhanced senses, nearly gagged on the scent. It was only because he had grown so used to the smell of blood during the Fourth Great Ninja War that he was able to keep the bile wanting to rise in his throat down. Issei was not nearly as lucky. The boy's face was green, and he looked like he might vomit at any moment. Naruto felt some sympathy for the kid. He had been just a regular person before he got caught up in all this due to that sacred gear in his arm. It really wasn't fair to him that he had to deal with this new lifestyle that he was in no way prepared for. Among those who seemed to have trouble dealing with the scent was Kaneko. His nose was crinkled in disgust, and her face took on a shade of green similar to Issei's. She probably had enhanced senses like Naruto did, being what she was. Naruto closed distance with her and absently handed her a cloth soaked in perfume. "Don't ask where he got the perfume or the cloth. Just go with it." Kaneko smiled in thanks as she gratefully took the cloth and used it to cover her nose. "Issei, Naruto," Rias said as they fully entered the mansion. The sound of their footsteps echoed loudly in the empty hallway. "This will be a good chance for you to see how we devils battle." She paused for a second, then added, "I should also probably take the time to explain how the servant system works, and what traits you gain as one." Issei scratched the back of his head in obvious confusion. "What do you mean by traits?" That question was all Rias needed to begin her lesson. "I've already explained the relationships between the devil, angel and fallen angel factions. The three-way war between those three factions left all sides exhausted in both moral and strength. A large number of pure-blood devils lost their lives, and there simply weren't enough of us to make up for the losses we suffered. Because of this, we needed to find a way to build our forces back. This was how the evil peace system was put into place." Issei gave Rias a look that said he had no clue what she was talking about. Naruto didn't either, but figured she would explain and thus kept himself from reacting too overtly. "Do either of you know what chess is?" "Isn't that, like, the European version of shogi?" asked Naruto, frowning a bit. Rias gave him a nod. "In a manner of speaking. It's very similar to shogi, but different at the same time. The pieces in chess are king, queen, knight, rook, bishop, and pawn. Each piece has its own unique traits." The group began searching for the wayward rogue devil, as Rias continued explaining how the evil peace system worked. So far there had been no sign of the one they had been ordered to exterminate. Naruto was just surprised by how clean the place was. Aside from some overturned furniture and a thick layer of dust, there was nothing to show it was being used by anyone. Given that this rogue devil was supposed to be eating humans here, he would have expected there to be blood splatters or even a half-eaten corpse of two. At the very least there should have been signs of a struggle. For the same reason, each servant undergoes training in a different ability. Although they do not have many skills, they are very powerful in the ones they do know. Rias paused for a moment as she looked inside a room that had once been a sitting area. Nothing but discarded chairs and broken tables were there now. Because of this, the evil peace system has become very popular since its conception. It's actually gotten to the point where those resurrected as an evil piece are being used in a competition called a rating game between nobles. "Rating game?" asked Issei, the clueless look on his face. Rias placed a hand against a pair of large double doors as she answered him. This was the last place they hadn't looked. To put it simply, a rating game is essentially pitting servants resurrected under the evil peace system in a live fire exercise similar to chess. It's actually gotten to the point where it could influence a devil's position and rank within an ability. Naruto scratched his chin as he read between the lines of her words. "Which means that, at some point, you're going to be expected to participate in a rating game, right?" "I'm still not a mature devil, so it's a ways off," Rias assured Naruto as she pushed open the door. There was a loud rattle followed by the creaking of hinges that had long gone unused as the door opened slowly. "I still can't officially enter the arena." The room beyond was pitch black. Darkness beyond darkness that no amount of enhancements would be able to pierce clung to the room like a cloak. "And what about unofficially?" asked Naruto, his words making Rias smile. The blonde really was quite smart. "Ugh," Issei groaned as he rubbed his head. "I don't really understand any of this. And what piece am I anyways?" Naruto perked up. He was also curious to know what piece he had been resurrected under. "Naruto, Issei, you too are." "What a delicious scent," a voice interrupted Rias from saying any more. Everyone present turned their attention towards the darkness of the room they were entering. With the doorway open, some light began creeping in, illuminating a bit of the room beyond, though not by much. "It's coming," Rias murmured darkly as she glared around the room. Noticing her look, Naruto allowed a kunai to slide into his right hand and held it in a reverse grip. "But it's also mixed with something foul. I think she's smelling herself," Naruto said out loud, his words causing Akeno to giggle while Rias and Kaneko smiled. Kiba looked somewhat amused, but was also sweat dropping at the very Naruto-ish comment. He had heard more than enough of those in class. "Oh Devil Visor, we are here to destroy you," Ryu shouted into the darkness beyond. Naruto's eyes sharpened as his ears picked up a dull thud some feet away. He still couldn't see anything due to whatever had moved being covered in darkness, but judging by the rhythmic thuds that followed, whatever it was coming towards him. Something flew out of the darkness. Naruto and everyone who had combat experience, that is to say, everybody except Issei, tensed and prepared to react. They relaxed a moment later, though only slightly, when they realized what it was that had flown out of the darkness, and now lay on the ground with blood pooling around it, and staining the wood paneling of the floor. Issei did not relax. If anything, he began to panic. The corpse. Once again, Naruto felt a moment of sympathy strike him as the boy turned green, and began to practically hyperventilate. It was clear to him that his fellow servant was in no way prepared for this kind of lifestyle. "What a nice scent. It smells so delectable that I just want to eat you up. Perhaps when I do, I'll get the chance to see if your blood is as red as your hair." Naruto's eyes snapped towards the source of the voice to find that he could finally see who it was, a somewhat attractive female with messy hair, red eyes and no shirt to cover her jiggling boobs. Or at least, she would have been a moderately attractive female if it weren't for the fact that her lower half was anything but human. Naruto didn't know what kind of beast she was, but the lower portion of her body looked like an accident between a lion and some kind of arachnid. 4 large legs with pawed feet kept the thing standing and balanced. There was a prehensile tail sticking out of her hind quarters. And her entire body was covered in fur. Truly, she was an ugly motherfucker. "Oppai. Naked Oppai." Naruto face-palmed as he heard Issei's shout. He sees what had to be the ugliest chick in the entire world, and that's the first thing he says. Granted, her top half was alright. Nowhere near as sexy as Ryu's or Keno, and she wasn't even cute enough to compete with Kaneko's tight little body, but it wasn't like her upper body was bad. However, that bottom of hers just killed it. It wasn't even that she had way too much junk in her trunk, just that the trunk she did have was the ugliest damn trunk he had ever laid eyes on. Well, Naruto supposed Issei wasn't known for being the most lecherous existence at school for nothing. There was a reason he had taken to calling the boy Irodibagain, after all. What an unsightly appearance. Ryu's crossed her arms under her chest. "It suits you well." "What a pretentious little girl," Visor snarled out. Naruto noticed that her human hands were holding onto 2 bloody javelins. "I'm going to enjoy staining your corpse with fresh blood as dark as your crimson hair." HMPH, Ryu smirked and took up a gesture of haughty poise. "I guess it's true what they say about smaller dogs having a louder bark." Visor seemed to realize that she had just been insulted. She did not take too kindly to it. "You bitch." Bearing one of her javelins back, she prepared to throw it, or maybe to close distance and stab Ryu's. Naruto didn't know. She never got the chance. "Yudo." "Got it." Kiba darted forward, his hands held out on either side, his body becoming nothing more than a blurry streak. Twin swords appeared within his grasp as he reached Visor, who switched targets from Ryu's to him. "Well, perhaps I should continue our lesson from earlier," Ryu said as she watched the proceedings with a single hand on the curve of her shapely hip. Kiba had just dashed in at speeds that Visor had no hope of keeping up with, his twin swords flashing, and slicing off one of her arms in a spray of gore. As the rogue devil roared in agony, Ryu spoke some more. "As you can see, Yudo is a knight, which focuses on incredible speed." "Die insect!" Visor roared as she lifted a foot to squash Kiba flat. The young swordsman did not move an inch as the foot began descending, for at that moment, Kaneko jumped in, her hand stretched out above her head. "Kaneko-chan!" Issei shouted in shock. "Don't worry, Issei," Ryu said as she and the others not involved in combat yet watched as the foot tried to stomp Kaneko into the ground. It didn't, or rather, it couldn't, as the white-haired first year managed to hold the woman's foot above her head without breaking a sweat. "Kaneko is a rook," as she continued speaking. The ground beneath Kaneko's feet cracked as she liberally shoved the foot she had been holding above her head off, causing Visor to stumble, and a rook's trait is insane strength and defense. In retaliation for getting shoved away like a 50-pound weakling, Visor's tail lashed out and Kaneko struck the young girl. Said amber-eyed cutie was sent flying, and only stopped when she smashed her into a wall. The force behind the attack was so great that the wall actually crumbled, and Kaneko was blown through it. "That level of attack won't work on Kaneko," Ryu said, smiling as she twirled a strand of hair between her fingers. Indeed, with the smoke cleared, Kaneko looked completely unscathed. Not even her skirt was scuffed in any way. "Time for you to be blown away." Using the incredible strength granted to her as a rook, Kaneko shoved herself off the ground and was blasted into the air, her left hand clenched into a fist and held above her head. She looked kind of like Superman or Supergirl, as she was way too cute to look like that Boy Scout with the penchant for wearing underwear over his pants. Like a rocket, the cute little first year crashed straight into Visor's underbelly. The power behind her attack had so much force to it that the much larger devil was blown off the ground and launched in a parabolic arc before descending and crashing straight through a wall. Kaneko clapped the dust off her hands, that bored look still on her face. So weak. Naruto smiled as he walked up to the girl he had taken such a shine to, and began rubbing her head. The blank expression turned into one of bliss as she leaned into his hand. "You really are something, Kaneko-chan." Kaneko just purred in response. Still standing where she had been since the start of the battle, Rya's eye twitched at the scene. "Can you two not do that here? We're still in combat, you know." "Ah, right." Naruto chuckled sheepishly as he took his hand off Kaneko's head, causing the first ear to pout. "My bad." Ugh, Visor moaned in pain. "How can a group so young be so strong? And now you'll get to see the last member of my peerage after you two." Rya's decided to ignore what had happened between Kaneko and Naruto. There was no reason to get upset over it anyways. It's not like she was jealous or anything. Akeno. Of course, Bucho. Akeno was all smiles as she clapped her hands in front of her face. There was something seriously disturbing about that pleasant and beautiful smile. Issei felt a shiver crawl up his spine. "Now, I wonder how I should do this." As the smiling Akeno began to slowly walk towards the struggling to stand Visor, Rya's continued her lecture. "Akeno is my queen. You bitch." "Oh my," smiling despite the insult, or maybe even because of it, Akeno tilted her head and looked down at the rogue devil. "You're still so energetic it seems. I guess it means you can withstand more punishment." A flash appeared within the room. "Then, how about I try something like this?" Akeno raised her hand and sparks of lightning shot from her fingertips into the air, then descended upon the hapless Visor. As a queen, Akeno has all the abilities of a pawn, knight, bishop and rook. She's the invincible vice president of our club. As Rya spoke, Naruto found himself paying extra attention to Akeno. He had noticed something off about her as she began zapping lightning at Visor. Akeno's breathing had picked up drastically, despite an attack of that level not being anywhere near enough to tire someone like her out. There was a heavy blush staining her cheeks as well, and she was squeezing her thighs together and shuddering in ecstasy every few seconds. "Oh my," Akeno licked her lips as she stared at the charred body of Visor, the small flush on her cheeks increasing to a brighter red. "It looks like you can still continue. I wonder how long you can keep this up." Naruto had seen that look before. It was a look he had seen a few times on particularly drunk women, when he entered a brothel with Iro-san during their training trip. He would recognize that expression anywhere. Akeno mainly specializes in attacking her opponents with magic. Akeno, her breathing erratic as if she had just finished a 6-hour romp fest, lifted her hand again, a large smile on her flushed cheeks. The way she licked her lips was as freaky as it was enticing. She is also the world's biggest sadist. That was the sound of Visor being electrocuted again, and again and again and again. Akeno, it seemed, loved toying with her opponents. Naruto was strangely reminded of Anko as he watched the Yamato Nadeshiko work. God bless that crazy snake lady's sexy soul. As Issei shivered in fear from watching Akeno take sexual pleasure from causing mass amounts of pain, Kiba made to reassure him. "Don't worry too much. The vice president is very gentle with her allies." Issei shivered again as he turned around and saw Akeno blasting what now looked like a well-done steak with more lightning. Naruto whistled as he walked up to the pair. "Is it wrong that I find Akeno to be extremely sexy right now?" Staring at the blonde like he was something diseased, Issei quickly moved away, hoping he would not get infected by whatever Naruto had. "Ha!" Akeno sighed, her body shuddering with post-orgasmic bliss as she held a hand to her cheek. It seems that still wasn't enough to kill her. Issei's sweat dropped as he looked at Visor. She may not be dead, technically, but she was most certainly not what you would call alive either. "I suppose I'll let the president have the final blow." Ayaz walked up to the thoroughly defeated Visor, stopping just a few feet away. Her was face blank, a perfectly compass mask befitting a devil of her high standing. "Do you have any last words?" "Kill me." "Very well then," Rya smiled, her eyes sharpening and turning a tad feral. Naruto would admit, it was even sexier than watching Akeno get aroused by causing pain. He must be turning into some kind of masochist. Damn that Jiraiya. It seemed some of his ways were sticking. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. As Rya held up her hand, what looked like a ball of black energy erupted above her palm. With an almost absent-mindedness, she held it out towards Visor, and then let it loose. The effect was impressive. The energy slammed into Visor, creating an inferno of dark flames that, upon vanishing, revealed the rogue devil they had been sent to kill was no more. There was nothing left, not even drop of blood to stain the floor with. Naruto whistled. Now that was impressive. And he wasn't lying. Though he had seen much more impressive battles and attacks, and if he could be so bold, felt that his battles against people like Nagato, Tobi and Madara were far more impressive. It did not mean what he had seen here was any less incredible. He had never seen something get so thoroughly destroyed to the point where there was not even charred remains. "It's over everyone," Rya smiled at her peerage. "Let's go back and have some tea." Everyone began to leave. It wasn't like there was any reason left to stay in the dump of a mansion, and with no more reason to stay, no one wanted to continue smelling all the blood that Visor had left in the house. "Excuse me, Bucho." Rya's turned to look at Issei. "What is it?" "I was just wondering." Issei began. "You never explained what my role was." "I have to admit, I'm curious to know what I'm as well," Naruto said. Truthfully, he didn't think he would need whatever abilities he gained from his piece, but he was curious nonetheless. That's right, she eyed the two. I forgot to tell you what you two are. Issei, your role is. Issei grinned and rubbed his hands together, probably thinking he was something awesome like an Idaruk. Pawn. He was disappointed. You mean to tell me I'm the lowest rank there is? Issei began crying. Large streams of tears like waterfalls came pouring out of his eyes in mass quantities, running down his face. Strangely enough, these tears did not stain his clothes. How odd. There, Naruto patted the boy's shoulder. It'll be alright. Don't patronize me. Rias, Naruto said. I'm curious, what piece am I? You? Rias frowned, her countenance shifting from amused to uncertain. I don't know. What do you mean? Asked Naruto, now also frowning. How can you not know? The piece I used on you was very special. It was given to me by my older brother. She paused to gather her thoughts. It's called a mutated piece. It's basically a chess piece that was normal at one point, but mutated and became something else. It contains all the original powers of the original piece it was, but it's no longer a proper representation of that piece, and is much stronger than it was originally. I see. So, you can't determine what it was then? Rias shook her head. I'm afraid not. She smiled and tried to add some brevity to the situation. I guess that means we're going to discover what your piece is together. Naruto found himself smiling as well. Truthfully, he didn't care what his piece was. Naruto would not need whatever trait it gave him. All he needed were the skills he had honed to perfection back in his homeworld. He would be the strongest devil in the world regardless of what his evil piece was. That was a promise. Dedabeo. Omake. A request gone wrong. Rias was sitting at her desk late at night, working on some paperwork. It wasn't something she enjoyed doing. Paperwork, that is, but it was something that needed to get done. As the heiress to an old and powerful clan of devils, and the owner of the city, it fell upon her to do it. It was just another reason she didn't like being the heiress to a powerful family. She could almost see why her brother was always trying to skip out on his paperwork. Exhaling a deep breath, Rias finished the last of the papers. Setting down her pen, she grabbed the last sheet of paper, and moved it from the unfinished section to the finished section on her desk. The busty young redhead leaned back in her comfortable leather seat, her arms stretching up behind her head, causing her breasts to jiggle enticingly. Had Issei been there at that moment, he would have likely been blown straight through a wall by a nosebleed. Just as Rias was about to stand up and head to the room containing her bed, a bright orange light filled the room. Blinking, she looked over at the floor, where a summoning circle she recognized as belonging to Naruto appeared. A second later said boy appeared within the single. Rias raised an eyebrow. Naruto. Her voice had him snapping his eyes over to her, a frantic look in them. Rias. Like a man who had just seen his life raft after being tossed into a raging maelstrom, Naruto rushed over to her. Rias would have leaned back as the blonde-haired Uzumaki placed his hands on her shoulder, and began shaking her back and forth. Quick! You have to hide me. You have to save me. Hide you? Save you? Rias gripped the frantic blonde's forearms to stop him from shaking her. What's going on, Naruto? And why are you shirtless? She looked at him again, then blinked. And is that glitter? It was indeed. Covering Naruto from head to toe was mass quantities of glitter. His defined male body sparkled and shone with each movement, even as thousands of tiny sparkles flew off him from his frantic movements. The blue-eyed devil looked almost like he had been shot at point blank with several glitter cannons. Never mind that. Naruto's panicked eyes flickered around the room, as if he were expecting to be attacked any second now. You have to protect me. Protect you? Ria's eyebrows furrowed. From what? From them. Rias was just about to open her mouth and ask who them was, but never got the chance. At that exact moment, the door to the occult research club room was busted open. Oh god, they found me. Rias blinked as several dozen girls, all covered in glitters and sparkles and glow-in-the-dark armbands rushed into the room. There he is. Let's get them. Come back here, Naruto-kun. You'll never take me alive. Quicker than Rias could actually follow, Naruto bolted towards the window. Seconds later, the glass was shattered as the blonde jumped through the window without even bothering to open it. After him, girls. It wasn't long after Naruto had left that the girls filed out of the room, leaving Rias alone. Said buxom beauty could only sit there, staring at the now broken down door and busted window with wide, blinking eyes. What just happened? Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.